Today, we're going to be going through the 7 universal laws that when you remember them, when you integrate them, you can use them to your advantage and you can use them to make reality your bitch, essentially. What do I mean by that? I mean, you can stop running through life on autopilot, at the whim of your circumstances, at the whim of your low bank account or your relationship or this unfavorable situation that you're in. You can stop being a slave to reality and instead become its master. So the principles we're going to be discussing today are actually the 7 Hermetic Principles. Now, I was first made aware of these through another channel called Neuro Knowledge. If you haven't checked him out, go and check his channel out. It's amazing. But through my own study of these, it really cemented in everything that I had learned previously about, quantum mechanics, about the universe, spirituality, my own spiritual experiences, visualization, manifestation. It really wired everything all in, and it gave me a broader understanding of how the universe operates as a whole. If you think of reality as a game, these are the rules to the game. And if you keep playing a game without knowing the rules, you're going to lose. So only the people who know the rules can win. And there are people in this reality who are winning because they're using these rules. So why Hermeticism is even relevant? I was unaware of the importance of Hermeticism for a really long time until I realized how it predates most modern religions, and its principles are reflected in every single other religious text. So this is almost like the first religion. It's also where science began. So the Hermetists were the original alchemists, and it's based on its leader Hermes Trismegistus. I'm really proud of myself for saying that clearly, who is this historical figure in ancient Greece and in ancient Egypt, who was known as the first astrologer, the first astronomer, messenger of the gods, and had channeled all of this ancient primordial wisdom. These principles are now being proven by modern science thousands and thousands of years later. And so it's fascinating to know that this wisdom existed over 2,000 years ago, and now it's only now being proven. We're going to go through the 7 laws. When you become aware of these, they're not something you even need to learn. They're something that you kind of gradually remember. How you know if something is a truth for you or not is you will feel it in your body. So when I studied these Hermetic principles, at first I didn't really have the awareness to really understand them. And to be honest, I probably have a long way to go in my awareness to really, really, really understand the depth of them, because they're layered. Sit with them. If you're confused at first about any of them, just sit with them. I know a lot of people read the Kybalion and they feel like, what the heck was that? And that's how I felt the first time I read it. But the second time I read it, I had a whole new understanding. The third time I had a new understanding again. And then I started noticing these rules playing out in my reality. Law number 1, the all is mind. The universe is mental. This effectively means the all in this context is source, the source of everything. The all is God, source, Allah, infinite consciousness, source consciousness, whatever you want to call it, that is the all. So the way that this is described is essentially every single thing in our known universe originates from the original mind of the all. And if we look in the Bible, it says that we were created in God's image. Man was created in God's image. Image meaning imagination. In the mind of God, our reality, our universe, our population was created. So before anything existed physically in the material world, it first existed as a thought. It first existed in the mind. And then it existed in physical reality, which also means you are part of the all. Okay, you are part of this mental projection, and you being created in God's image, you have the factors of the source of the all within you, which means what you create in your image is what is projected into your individual reality. So the fact that you're a living, breathing, conscious human being with consciousness means that you are divine in nature, because consciousness is divine in nature, because it's the essence of existence. So this is source consciousness. You're existing as a fractal of source consciousness. Your consciousness that's within you is divine. It is actually God. It's source energy. And so you've got to realize the power that you have in being a conscious being with imaginative faculties, with the faculty to think on the mental plane. Even, I know some of you struggle with actually visualizing and imagining things, but the fact that you are existing with consciousness and you exist on the mental plane in this reality, in this universe, means that you have creative capacity as God does, because you were created in God's image. Even in quantum mechanics, we see that consciousness collapses possibility into form. When waves of information, when they're existing as potentials in the quantum field, when they're observed by an external observer, they collapse into matter. Okay, so it's all the same principle. Every single thing that exists in physical reality first must exist in the mental fields. And so think about everything that exists: this pen, this whiteboard, this jacket, this camera, the airplanes in the sky, the table. Everything that exists physically first had to exist mentally. Nothing could exist in this reality until it existed mentally first. So if you want to think of it like this can be really helpful. You've got like this energy, right? Life force energy, consciousness, which is the fabric of the universe, which is coming from source, which is the creative power of everything that's in existence. It flows through, hold on, let me draw this. That's supposed to be a brain. It flows through your brain, okay? I think I would know how to draw a brain by now. So when consciousness is directed at neurological tissue, because it's basically just dead tissue, it becomes mind. It's the consciousness that activates the tissue, and then it becomes mind. Consciousness flows through your mind, and then a possibility is created in the mental field. Only from there can it begin to exist physically as matter. Because even in neuroscience, we see the human brain is constantly constructing perceptions based on the information you're perceiving in your senses. And that's what we call reality. We live in a perception-based reality. We are at the center of it. Us, our senses, and our processing of that senses through our mind and our mental field is what creates reality. You are the common denominator. So we have this tendency to bumble around throughout life thinking everything is just happening to us, but it's not happening to us. It's happening through us. You are the lens through which reality can even exist. And do you not ever think, like, how did we get here? How is it so ideally set up that we breathe oxygen and there's blood flowing through our veins and we're just alive on this planet perceiving everything, and light's coming in through our eyes and getting refracted through our retina, and then that's giving us sensory input as to what we can see in front of us? Do you not ever question how intelligently designed this is for us to be having this experience? In actuality, the experience that you're having with your senses is less than 1% of what exists. It's a very limited portion of the entirety of what actually exists out there. Even if we think about light, the electromagnetic spectrum of light, you're seeing 0.0035% or something tiny like that, okay? It's less than 1% of the whole spectrum is what you can actually perceive as a human being with your senses. But not only that, you take in the information, you process it through your mind, through your mental plane. That's what creates a projection, a construction, and a perception of what exists. And that's what reality is. You know, they've even shown this even further in quantum mechanics, that every atom that exists, because of the observer effect, our consciousness is essentially infused with the particles that make up matter. So we are intrinsically connected. Even like, you're probably thinking, there's a building that's there. It's there if I'm perceiving it or I'm not perceiving it. Well, yes, because the consciousness of many, 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 many people have perceived this thing. And so all of their consciousness is fused with the particles of this building. So of course it's going to remain in existence even if you stop perceiving it. But if you're thinking about how can I change the events in my life, you have to change the things that you're holding in your mind. So how can you use this law to your advantage? The first thing you need to do is be very careful with the inputs that you allow into your mental field, okay? I want you to think about your mind like a garden, okay? And you watching news, reality TV, and stuff that's implanting negative paradigms and perceptions into your mental field is essentially like you opening up the gate in your garden. And I want you to literally, I'm going to give you a weird visual. There's a bunch of like weeds and rats and all these pollutants standing at the gate waiting to come in. They've got like their briefcase or their suitcase, they're ready to move in. You allowing this stuff and putting this into your mental field is essentially like you opening up that gate and saying, yes, come poison my garden. Yeah, come on in. Come on, let's do it. And so you let all this poison into your mental field. And then what happens? All these weeds take root. All the beautiful flowers and things that were growing start to die. Your mind is a garden. So you want to be feeding it what you want to grow. I mean, even if we look a step further, you've got a subconscious mind. Your subconscious mind specifically is a garden. Your subconscious mind is connected to everything. It's connected to infinity. It's connected to infinite possibilities. All of these possibilities that exist in the quantum field, you can connect to them through your subconscious mind. It is the universal mind. It is limitless. There are infinite possibilities in there. You just think there are finite possibilities because you've programmed yourself with limitation, in part due to the inputs that you're putting in. You know, TV programs were invented to program our subconscious mind with a particular narrative to keep us in a particular state of consciousness. Because if everybody knew this, everybody would be extremely powerful, because we all are naturally extremely powerful. You have been given the power of imagination, the power of will, the power of reason, the power of intuition. You have all of these higher faculties within you, as well as being a physical being. It's insane the amount of power that we have, but a lot of us don't know it because the inputs that we're feeding into our higher faculty, into our mental fields, is poisoning us, and it's keeping us limited. I'm going to give you a weird example. For a while, I was binge watching Emily in Paris, and I do watch TV sometimes. I'm not saying you need to be on a mountain just meditating 10 hours a day, but I noticed I stopped being able to imagine so much. I stopped being able to visualize so much. I stopped being as creative. I stopped thinking so clearly. And so what did I do? I turned off Emily in Paris. I stopped watching it every evening. And this is what you need to do. You have to feed your mind things that you want to feed it and things that you want to grow, because the negative stuff takes root and it grows. Your subconscious mind is it's like a dark room. The seeds that you plant in there grow. And there's an amazing book, it's called The Power of Your Subconscious Mind. It calls it a dark room. And it really emphasizes the fact that when you get an idea, as soon as it crosses the threshold through either repetition or emotional conviction, or it actually needs a combination of both, it's taken root. And it will immediately alter your perception. It'll alter your behavior. It'll alter your self-image. And it will make this thing that's just been planted real for you. So this is serious. You want to be tending to your subconscious mind, what you're planting in the garden of your subconscious mind, like your life depends on it, because it does. This is what's creating your life experience. Music, opinions, gossip, news, TV, social media. Get rid of it. Okay. And then on the flip side, put in inputs that fire you up, that reprogram your mind, which brings me to my second point. Mentalism, how you're going to master this. Okay, master your inputs. Master the beliefs that you hold in your mind. I have a whole video on how to reprogram your subconscious mind. I will leave it down below. But you want to start noticing your limiting narratives. When you say something that does not empower you to live the life that you want to live, that's a limiting belief. And you need to start questioning that stuff, because nothing is true except for what you accept as true. Anything that has taken root in your subconscious mind, that's truth. No matter how much evidence you have for one belief, you can gather the same amount of evidence and conviction in a new belief. And as soon as the new belief overrides the old belief, you have reprogrammed that belief. It is that simple. But every belief that you have, it puts you in a box of what you can experience in this reality. So you better make sure they are beliefs that serve you and that put you in a box of reality that you enjoy. So I have to remind clients of this all the time when they're kind of just going along maybe in their business and they're saying, this is difficult and I need to do it this way and I need to do it that way. I remind them like, hey, why are you speaking this narrative over yourself? Why are you putting all these terms and conditions on yourself that need to exist in order for you to be successful? You're the one writing this script. You're the one telling this story. And so that's why you're in a reality where if you're not jumping through all of these imaginary hoops that you've created for yourself, you can't be successful. Why don't you just tell the story that you don't have to jump through any of those hoops and you can still be successful? You can do it your way and you can still be successful, because as soon as you wire in that belief, that will be your reality. You will see those events reflected back to you in reality. You will start seeing opportunities, insights, ideas that will help you to live in that reality. And anyone who's created anything amazing, they have wrote their own script. They've written their own script for how things should be. If we take a simple example, the algorithm in social media. Person A could be doing all these systems and all these strategies, and it's killing their creativity and it's killing their drive. Person B could just be flowing and doing it their way and not putting any restrictions and limitations and regulations on themselves, and they allow themselves to really reach their full creative potential. Person A believes, I can't succeed unless I do all these strategies. Person B believes, I will succeed because I'm going to just make up my own strategies. I don't need a strategy to succeed. Person B will succeed without a strategy. Person A is putting themselves in a box of limitation that makes it harder to succeed. So what terms and conditions, what limits are you putting on yourself? Reprogram them. We're not going to spend as much time on all 7, by the way, but this is such a foundational one. So it's important that we break down the different layers. The third thing you're going to do to master this and apply this to your life, to make reality your bitch, is visualization. Visualization is so important. So Neville Goddard talks about this a lot. You want to visualize from the wish fulfilled. He speaks about all the things that he brought into his reality by living them mentally in his imagination first. And I was rereading The Power of Your Imagination yesterday. And he gave the example of when he was visualizing spending the winter in Barbados. And his mentor, Abdullah, told him, you don't want to be thinking about how am I going to get to Barbados? You don't want to be thinking about, will it happen or any of these things? You want to be thinking about imagining a scene where it's already done, feeling the emotions where it's already done, thinking, feeling, believing that it's done already and playing that out in your imagination. Why do you think you were gifted the ability to imagine things? Why are you wasting this resource? It's yours to use. You have free will. Use it. So what he was doing, and he's explained in that situation, where his imagination is in those scenes and in those moments, he is also there as well. He's where his imagination is, and he's also where his physical body is. And that just blew my mind because I thought that is so true. Where you send your imagination is where you send yourself. It's just as real as where you are physically in reality. Why? Because your imagination is you. It's a part of you. So you are where it is. So where have you been sending it? Most people don't realize how powerful their imagination is because they're using it to imagine the same old circumstances, the same old situations, the worst case scenarios, and they're in a loop of seeing that in reality and imagining it and seeing it again and then imagining it again and then seeing it again and imagining it again. You can imagine your way out of the situation that you're in. You just have to exercise your conscious will enough to go and do that. And if we look at this in the brain, we have a thing called the reticular activating system in the mind, which essentially is this filter in your brain that, depending on what you're picturing, depending on what your paradigm is, depending on what your mental landscape looks like, when you perceive information from the outside world, it is filtered through the filter of your mental landscape. When you start imagining something different, something outside your paradigm. So let's say, for example, instead of feeling insecure, you're picturing that you feel really confident in social settings. You're laying down the neural pathway for this thing to be real for you, for this thing to exist in your mental landscape. It's like you're planting a new flower in your garden. And the next time the event comes up where you're in a social situation, you have already laid that down in your mind. And so the information can pass through and it comes through differently. All of a sudden you perceive opportunities, insights, ideas. You're prompted to take certain actions that you never were before. This is why athletes do mental rehearsal. This is why every successful person that I know, they use visualization. They use the power of their imagination. I know people who every single morning, they mentally rehearse, they picture how their day is going to go. Best case scenario for everything. Show me how good it can get. I know people who print out photos and put them all over their walls. I know people who have printed out photos 10 years ago and they're now living in those photos in their reality. Why? Because they allowed themselves to create the image of this thing in their mental reality so that it could exist in their physical reality. Everything that exists physically existed mentally first. So until you start letting things exist for you mentally, they are not going to exist for you physically. What have you been imagining? Take radical responsibility for the pictures that you've been creating in your mind, for the scenarios that you've been envisioning in your mind. That's why you have the results that you have. Change them and your results will change. The biggest lie we're ever told is that magic doesn't exist. Like, this is basically what we would perceive as magic. You are constantly casting spells over yourself, over your reality, with the words that you speak, the thoughts that you think, and the things that you imagine. Okay, the second law is the law of correspondence. You've probably heard me say this one. As above, so below. As within, so without. Similarly, in the Bible, we see on earth as it is in heaven. This is kind of like a mirror principle. It basically means as it is in the microcosm, it is the same in the macrocosm, meaning everything is mirrored across each plane of this reality. So you can see this if you study the patterns of the cosmos, nature, a human being, thought, particles. Every single thing in the universe reflects the next thing. Let's take an example of this. If we take a tree, okay, I'm going to do a really bad job of drawing a tree. The branches of trees, okay, what does that look like? That looks like the branches within a human lung. That's actually not bad. That's not bad art for me. You know what else this looks like? The formation of galaxies, right? Did you know that if we were to look at galaxies forming over the span of like billions of years, it would look like this? Just like the branches of a tree, just like the branches in our lungs. Did you also know that a human being, this is like a fun fact so you can see how connected everything is. Our hearts basically beat so that we can push hemoglobin around our body, so that we can have iron, so that we can bind oxygen, so that we can exist. Basically, we can bind oxygen from the atmosphere so that we can exist in these vessels. Iron can only actually be generated through supernovas, through stars forming and exploding. And supernovas are happening mostly through galaxies moving throughout the universe. And you think you just fell out of a coconut tree. Like, you think you're just here to pay bills and die. Like, but you see, like when we say everything is connected, everything is connected. And you can apply this to your life in knowing that your inner state is your outer world. The self and the reality of the self are one. As within, so without. Let me give you an example of this. When people come into my community, the first module is all about coming back into your energy, releasing all the distractions, retuning, and releasing like the illusions of this reality and of the ego. And we meditate a lot in module 1. And when people start meditating, one thing that they realize is that it's safe to let go of the chatter of the mind. It's safe to let go of all of these thought patterns that the ego becomes attached to. So that's the within, okay? And when somebody gets to that moment of meditation where they finally let go and they realize it's safe to let go of an attachment of the ego to a thought in their mind, they're able to do that in reality. So they're able to detach and let go of circumstances, of people, of situations in reality, because they did it within in meditation, and then they can do it without in their circumstances. So how can you apply this to your life? And again, I'm not going to dwell too long in this one because I'm going to be referring to this in the other ones, and you're going to see how they're very connected and how deep this goes. But how can you apply this immediately to your life? Every single time that you look at something in your reality, you have to realize that it is connected to something within you, because as within, so without. Law 3, the law of vibration. Nothing rests, everything moves, everything vibrates. Again, this relates to science because we have this thing called string theory, which, yes, it's not an absolutely established theory, but again, modern science is really just catching up to things that Kabbalists and Hermeticists and ancient Buddhists knew thousands of years ago. So string theory basically goes within matter, within the atoms within matter, within those, there's these things called, I think they're called quarks. Yeah, they're called quarks. Within those, there are filaments which are vibrating at different frequencies. And the frequency that something is vibrating at dictates the particle that it generates, and that dictates the difference in the different forms of matter that we perceive through our 5 senses. Okay, stay with me. So physics shows this. Nothing rests, everything moves, everything vibrates. Everything is made up of perpetually vibrating particles. in physical reality. Now, as within, so without. So that means that your thoughts, your emotions, and your consciousness has a vibration as well. I'm like a mad scientist. I'm literally stood here in my bare feet. Because we know the principle of correspondence, we can examine something like water. Water and ice are the same thing. They are just existing in different rates of vibration. And it is the same thing when we apply that to the energetic mental plane. Thoughts and matter are the same thing. They are just vibrating at different frequencies. And I bet you in, I don't know, many years to come, depending on where the consciousness of the planet goes, we're probably going to have machines that can scan our thoughts like x-rays and see that they're real things. They are real things. You know they're real. You're experiencing them all the time. Yet for some reason, we discredit them. Your state is the most important thing. So you have an overall frequency. Energetically, you are admitting you have an electromagnetic field around your body and you have a particular frequency. Whatever you desire in life, you have to be on a vibration that is resonant with that which you desire. Otherwise, you will not fuse to it and you will not experience it as a physicality. If we look at the different forms of consciousness, the spiritual plane is the highest frequency, it's the highest vibration, it is the highest form of consciousness. The physical plane is one of the lowest forms of consciousness. The mental plane is kind of like your middleman. It's like your portal between the spiritual and the physical. Again, when we look at physical reality, there are all these different possibilities for what you can experience, all these different spaces in this matrix of reality for what you can experience. Each individual parallel reality has a particular frequency. You are landing in this reality that you're in right now because of your resonant frequency. If we look at you as a human being, according to the different states of consciousness, this is the Hawkins model, you basically, when you're down here in shame and fear, you are in a lower state of consciousness and you have a lower frequency. When you're up here in joy and enlightenment, you are closer to this higher dimension and you have a higher frequency. You don't need to be high vibe. You don't need to be enlightened. You just need to be in the vibration that is resonant with what you desire. But as you raise up in your frequency, in your energy, in your awareness, in your consciousness, you're able to perceive a lot more. So this is perception. As you shift your consciousness and you raise out of these lower states into higher states, your perception expands. You're able to perceive a lot more in physical reality than you were able to perceive before. Because a lower state of consciousness is basically you descending further into illusion and away from the truth of source and your essence, which is this divine consciousness, which is the divine mind that created you. So the more you're down here in these lower states, the more you're in illusion, the less you can perceive. So you think this is you. You think you're just this guy running around having experiences, but that's not just you. You also have this field, this invisible field of energy around your body. For some people can actually see this. It's like your auric field around you. This field is your electromagnetic field. Did you know that your brain creates electricity? Did you know when you think certain thoughts, it fires neurons which communicate with electrochemical signals? Did you also know that your heart generates a magnetic field? And when you get your thoughts and your heart, which is your emotions, in alignment with your desired vibration, that is what creates your resonant vibration, which attracts that to you in reality. Because this electromagnetic field is producing electromagnetic waves like a signal, like on a radio. A channel is being tuned through different frequencies. You are doing the same thing constantly through what you're thinking and through what you're feeling. And if we go deeper, you think certain thoughts because of what you believe. So this is where the mental rewiring comes in. You believe certain thoughts because of who you believe to be and your identity and your self-concept. All of these things create your energetic vibration. How can you shift your frequency and change your vibration? Okay, stillness. You have a natural set vibration. You have a naturally high vibration. You have illusions that you've stored within you. You have trauma that you've stored within you that's causing you to stray away from that and stray further from the universal flow that wants to make its way to you when you are in your highest vibration. When you prioritize stillness, sitting down, meditating, closing your eyes, shutting out the noise, shutting out the distractions, tuning back into your truth, your energy, coming home to your essence, you reconnect with that natural vibration that is within you. And the second thing is identity work. What this means is working on your beliefs, thoughts, emotions, and that's all governed by your concept of yourself. That is the kind of backbone of your frequency, because you will never believe outside of your self-concept or your identity. You will never think outside your beliefs, and you will never feel outside of what you're thinking and believing. Law number 4 is the law of polarity. Everything is dual, everything has poles, everything has its pair of opposites. Like and unlike are the same. Opposites are identical in nature, but different in degree. So this is a really simple one, but when you understand this, it's so powerful. If we take the example of heat and cold, they are not different things. They are varying degrees of the same thing, which is temperature. If you take the example of love and hate, they are not different things. They are varying degree of the same energy, which is love. So love is on the higher spectrum, higher end of the positive spectrum of love. Hate is on the negative spectrum of love, but it is the same thing. They are identical in nature, but different in degree. So a lot of us believe, for example, we can't experience abundance because we're experiencing lack, but you're already experiencing that energy. It's just the degree that you're experiencing is on the negative end of the spectrum. And so if we take a really simple example of fear and courage, a lot of people, when they feel fear, they try to run from it, or they try to do something else, like they try to practice another type of emotion and have something that's different in nature in order to alchemize fear, but that's not how it works. You have to, in order to transmute something, you have to shift along the spectrum of your experience of that thing. So the only way that you can transmute fear is to shift along the spectrum and amplify courage. The only way to transmute hate is to focus on and amplify love. The only way to get rid of cold is to focus on and amplify heat. The only way to get rid of lack is to focus on and amplify abundance. The only way to get rid of failure is to focus on and amplify success. So if you're experiencing, and this is how you practically apply this, if you're experiencing something in your life that you don't prefer, okay, so let's say you're experiencing lack. You have to take your focus off all the things that are evidence of lack and transmute it to focusing on the opposite, which is abundance. What you're doing is you're already experiencing this energy, but you're transmuting which end of this energy, which pole you are experiencing. If you're experiencing failure, instead of continuing to narrate, okay, failure, I'm experiencing failure, realize this is the energy of success just in the negative spectrum. So you can transmute it by realizing what lessons you gained from the failure and how it actually is going to accumulate your success. Focus on how your success can amplify, and then you'll transmute this energy into the positive pole. What you focus on compounds. So even if you have a tiny success, even if you have a tiny bit of abundance, you already have a lot of that energy. You've just focused on the negative pole for so long that it's accumulated. So as soon as you start focusing on the positive end of the pole, you're starting to accumulate energy in that direction. And all the energy that you've gathered in the negative end of the spectrum will start moving over towards the positive end of the spectrum, which brings me to my next principle, which I feel ties in really nicely with polarity, and that is the law of rhythm. Everything flows out and in, all things rise and fall. The pendulum swing manifests in everything. So the ebb and flow of the tides, the seasons, the cycles of the seasons, the cycles of a woman's hormonal cycle, the law of rhythm manifests on everything in reality. Now, there's one key point about rhythm. You might be thinking, okay, obviously there's cycles of the moon, there's cycles of the seasons, there's day and night. This is clear. The way that you can use this to start mastering reality is by realizing that the measure of the pendulum swing to the right equates to the measure of the pendulum swing to the left. So this is another component of this. Rhythm always compensates. What does that mean? When the pendulum swings in a particular distance in one direction, it has to swing back the same distance in the other direction. Now, in the Kybalion, it kind of gives a caveat that this doesn't apply to if it swings in the negative direction, that you're going to get backlash basically equated in the same direction to the positive direction. It seems to mostly apply the other way around. So if you experience a lot of darkness, the amount of darkness that you just experienced, you have the capacity to experience the same amount of light. And I see this time and time again. People who experience a lot of very dark things, people who go through a lot of challenges, a lot of turmoil, it opens up this energetic capacity for them to experience more light than somebody who hadn't. Somebody who experiences a lot of negativity then goes on to experience a lot of positivity. So how can you apply this to your life? Okay, realize as within, so without. So just as life has seasons, you have seasons. If you have a season of darkness, of negativity, of struggle, you are going to have the opposite season. Okay, that pendulum is going to swing and you're going to experience the opposite. So the masters, people who are mastering reality, they do not identify with either end of the swing of the pendulum. So when things are going extremely well, you do not get overly attached to it. You do not get overly caught up in it. You do not overly identify with it. But when things go really badly, you realize it is only a matter of time before rhythm compensates and the pendulum swings back. And particularly keep in mind, when you're going through a particularly rough time or particularly challenging circumstances, you are accumulating distance in the pendulum for it to swing back even further than you've ever been before into light, into positive things unfolding for you. Nothing is permanent. The tide flows in and out. And also I'm going to caveat this. This is just something that I've experienced. This is not really defined in Hermeticism. But if you can respect your seasons, okay, without overly identifying with each season. If you're having a winter season, respect that you're in winter. Stop trying to grow leaves. You look crazy. If you're in summer, respect your season. Be outside, be creating, be doing everything that you're supposed to do. If you can respect your seasons, you'll be able to gain the lessons from the season and move through it with the most peace, with the most clarity, and with the least resistance. Okay, cause and effect. You might be familiar with the Newtonian law of cause and effect in physical reality. So that is basically the law that for every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. That is the truth for physical reality. But we're not just thinking about the physical 3D plane, because that's how we stay limited. We're thinking about what are the levers that cause us to even take action in the first place. So your mental reality is the cause of your physical reality. Part of your physical reality is your actions. A lot of the arguments for, working on the mind and manifestation and all of this stuff is, okay, but if I just take the right actions, then I'm going to get the result anyway. Yes, and you should be taking the right actions, but most of us don't have the right mental paradigm to compel us to take the right actions. Nothing you do is random. Everything that you do is triggered by what exists in your mind. So when you've got a negative paradigm, you have a perception of obstacles and you take limited actions that are misaligned. If you have a positive paradigm, so this is really broad, you perceive opportunities. Because you perceive opportunities, you take actions that are aligned with those opportunities. Therefore, in physical reality, you're taking an action, you'll get an equal or opposite reaction, which means you will get the reality that is resonant with your mental reality first. So every single thing that you're perceiving in your reality is a byproduct of an energy that you have embodied in the past and of a mental reality that you have been living in up until this moment. And there's one question I want you to take away with this. Where have I been acting as an effect instead of a cause? So most people, they're looking at their external reality and they're in a feedback loop where they see lack in their reality. They identify with lack. They allow that to program their paradigm, their mental field with lack. And then guess what? They perceive more lack in physical reality. The majority of people are acting as effects when they are actually the cause. And that's why they stay stuck in a reality. That's why they stay stuck acting as a slave to reality. They are allowing their external circumstances to dictate who they are, what they can have, and what they can believe in, instead of writing that script internally and then perceiving it externally. So the only way that you can break out of whatever situation that you're in reality is to take the reins back over your mind and to stop acting as the effect, which is not what you were intended to be, and start acting as the cause. How do you do that? You go, okay, I see lack. I do not allow lack to define me as lack. I do not allow myself to identify with lack. I do not allow myself to keep defining beliefs of lack just because I see lack. Because I am the cause, I am going to identify with abundance. I'm going to create a mental landscape that believes in possibility, that believes in abundance. And then guess what? That's what you will see, because you've broken the loop, reflected externally to you. If you're not consciously acting as the cause and creating your paradigm and your internal reality and watering and sowing and tending to the garden of your mind, you are being created by your environment. And if you don't like your environment, then you have to break that cycle. You have no idea how powerful you are until you stop acting as an effect. Think about it. Material matter in the material world. The physical world is the lowest form of consciousness. You're allowing a form of consciousness that is lower than you, with your higher faculties and your higher capabilities and your godlike seed within you to create. You're allowing this stuff to dictate to you who you are, when you are the higher creative conscious being. It makes no sense. It makes no sense. So stop doing it. The final principle. Oh, this one blows my mind. I think I'm going to do a whole video on each of these guys, because as you can probably tell, I could talk about this all day. Law number 7 of the universe is the principle of gender. I've done a whole workshop based around this law, specifically in my community. So if you're really interested in this, like this fascinates me, go and check that out. So the law of gender states everything has its masculine and feminine principle. Gender is in everything, and I mean everything. Anything that has been created within the infinite creative force of God, of source, of this universe, has its masculine and feminine principles. So if you look at the story of Adam and Eve, that is the story of creation, of Genesis. Adam is the masculine principle, of the spiritual masculine energy. Eve is the feminine principle. Adam is also atoms that build up our physical reality, and Eve is the electrons. Did you know that atoms are masculine energy and Eve is feminine energy? In order for anything to exist in creation, masculine and feminine energy need to come together. This is the yin and yang in Chinese philosophy. This is why, don't you think it's so cool that this principle has manifested in physical form, in gender, in human beings? Like, you are a man or a woman because of this principle. The only reason we can procreate is because of the law of gender. So creation of a physical human being can only manifest when the masculine and feminine principle come together. And how you apply this to your life, you have to use your masculine and your feminine faculties in order for you to be the most creative being that you can be. So, fun fact, your brain is basically divided up into masculine and feminine energy. Your left hemisphere of your brain is where the masculine principles live, which is your logic, your reasoning, your analytical mind. It's your action taker, it's your decision maker, and then your feminine energy is your right hemisphere. And that's connected to your intuition, creativity, play, imagination. How cool is it that we're designed like this? This is how you know that you have been handcrafted to be a creative being. Why would you be given all of these faculties, the perfect blend of the energies of creation, the masculine and feminine energies, if you weren't intended to create? How you apply this to your life is you need both. So your masculine and feminine energies, they feed each other. So you need to be allowing yourself to play in your imagination, to visualize, to follow your intuition, to follow your feelings, to be in your body. That's the feminine energy. But you also need to take action, set up structures, use your logic to act on the intuition and the imagination and the visions of the feminine energy. Because if you don't use your masculine is the outer structure that holds the feminine creative energy. If you don't use your masculine to actually take action and to use logic and structure to give this thing life in physical reality, then your feminine energy is going to actually switch off. It's going to just be like a blob on the floor. It's going to have no support. And then your imagination is going to turn off. You're not going to be able to visualize it. You're going to have no creativity. So again, I have a whole seminar on masculine and feminine energy. So I'm trying to distill this down to you in a way that you can apply it straight away. But you need to balance pushing forward and taking action and hustling, which predominantly is masculine energy, which most of us are overdoing it in masculine energy, with rest and play and nurture and integration. Even if you're a man, you need to balance both of these energies, because the feminine energy feeds the masculine energy and the masculine energy feeds the feminine energy. So when you don't prioritize rest, play, being in your body, your passions, your creativity, visualizing, imagination, you end up with no creative sauce, like no juice to give your masculine energy to actually go and act on. So I always give this analogy. Your masculine energy is like your car, okay? You're not going anywhere without it in reality. You're trying to go from A to B in reality. You need your car. No, sorry, that is, you know what I'm trying to draw. It's a car. So you need your car to get from A to B, all right? And so most of us are looking at the car. We're looking at the car. We're like, go car. What's wrong with you? Just take another action. Just hustle. Just grind. Just work harder. But you've got no gas in the car. The gas is your feminine energy. So the car is your masculine. The gas is the feminine. It's like your creative life force. It's called Shakti in some traditions. It's that creative sauce in the cosmos that exists within you. You need that. You need to be able to fuel yourself with that. Otherwise, you will not be compelled to take action. You will not have drive. You will not have clarity. You will not even have a vision to work towards. I have more videos on how to get out of survival mode, and you need feminine energy to create your dream life. I'll leave that down below as well. But just keep this in mind. Keep in mind the balance. Keep in mind you need the rest, the integration, the play, the flow, and you need the action, the structure, and the logic. When you can balance both of these things, you will be operating and optimizing the principle of gender in your reality, and you will become your most powerful, most creative self. You'll be using the tools that have been God-given to you to create in this reality. To summarize, we had mentalism. The all is mind. The origin of all in your reality, therefore, is your mind. So you must tend to your mind through your inputs, monitor your inputs, through your belief systems, make sure there's no beliefs in there that limit you, only ones that empower you, and through active visualization of the reality that you prefer. The second principle that we spoke about today was the law of correspondence. The law of correspondence states, as within, so without, as above, so below. So by studying one thing in reality, we can take lessons from that on ourselves. You know, when you see a pattern in your life, look at how that's a pattern within you. If you change something in your inner world, then you can change it in your outer world. The third principle was the law of vibration. Nothing rests, everything moves, everything vibrates. So every single thing in this universe has a resonant frequency. If you want to align with something different, you need to become the frequency that is fused with that thing, that is resonant with that thing, just like tuning the dial on a radio. And so you have to monitor your thoughts, your emotions, and overall the thing that controls that is your self-concept, okay? How do you view yourself? How do you think about yourself? And then how do you feel day to day? And one of the biggest hacks to shifting your vibration and your frequency is to come back to stillness, come back to meditation, do purifying practices that cleanse the thing from your energy that are distorting your frequency in the first place. Number 4 is the law of polarity. So opposites are identical in nature, but different in degree. How you can use this is in the alchemy of your own emotions, your own situation, your own mental states. If you're experiencing one thing that you don't prefer, all you have to do is shift your focus to the opposite degree of that thing. You already have the energy of that thing within you. You just have to experience the other end of the spectrum by focusing on it and allowing that to compound for you. That is the basis of alchemy and transmutation. So you can alchemize fear to courage. You can alchemize failure to success. take faith in knowing you've experienced this energy. It's the same energy. You just have to focus on the opposite end. Number 5 was the law of rhythm. So everything flows out and in, the pendulum swing manifests and everything. So the lesson with rhythm is to respect your seasons and appreciate that nothing is permanent. The tide flows in and out in every area of your life, in how you feel, in the things that you're experiencing. And the masters know this. So the masters are non-resistant to the pendulum swing. And so how you master this in your reality and you don't get stuck in an area where you don't prefer is you don't overly identify with where the pendulum has swung. When the pendulum swings into negativity or into darkness, get excited because it's going to swing back to the same distance in the positive direction. So you rise above this by not getting caught up in whichever direction the pendulum has swung. Number 6 is the law of cause and effect. Every effect has its cause. Every cause has its effect. And so the lesson here is realizing you are not intended to act as an effect in this reality. You are the cause of the situations in your physical reality. So always take accountability for where you're being defined by your circumstances and flip that. Define yourself and the resonant circumstances will follow. And the final principle was gender. Everything has its masculine and feminine principles. How you apply this to your life is you honor those principles within you so you can be your most creative self that you were intended to be. That's why you were gifted these dual energies. That's all for this video, guys. I hope it helped. These principles are so deep. They basically encompass the fabric of our universe. And if you can apply them to your life, you are going to make reality your bitch. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you all next week.